Hi everybody, I'm going to show you how to sharpen a chainsaw. This is an Echo chainsaw. It's a CS370 with a 16-inch bar on it. And I'm going to show you how to sharpen it. And this is especially helpful if you're going to be going through like a storm like we are. We're going through hurricane or tropical storm Andrea. But yeah, it's going to be showing you how to sharpen a 5/32 chain. So you'll need a file and guide, the 5/32 file. And if you want to, you can you can do the depth gauges too. So here's the file, and then here's the file gauge. I highly suggest you use a file gauge because you can mess up the angles on the cutter teeth if you don't do it properly. And then here's the handle. But to assemble your file, you just put it through the loops on it. Put the file through the loops and get it to about there. So about that much is sticking up the end there. Or you can put a little bit more, and then there's these nuts on top. On the top of it, there's one on each end. You just tighten those till they're tight. And here's the other one. And then you stick the handle, or the file, into the handle. So there we go. Now your file's set up. Let me turn this. Anyways, so there's left and right hand cutters on a chainsaw chain. So these ones here, when you're looking from the back of the chainsaw, the ones that have this point here, when they point, when the point of the cutter, like right here, this cutter here is a left-hand cutter. This cutter here, though, is a right-hand cutter, because the point is on this side. But, yeah, you want to do even pressure on them when you're filing the chainsaws, the cutters on the chain. But, and you want to make sure that when you file them, that you do even filing pressure, like I said. And you also want to do the same amount of strokes on each tooth. So, like, if you do 5 strokes on this left-hand cutter here also needs 5 strokes. Because if you don't, and they're sharpened unevenly, it's going to cut, like what's called a banana cut. So like when you're cutting through a log, it's going to be like angling to one side, and then it's not going to cut very well. It's like if you're trying to cut a straight piece of firewood to split or something, it's not going to be straight on one end. So it's the first left-hand cutter here, and what I suggest you do is pick the most badly worn cutter to start on, so that when you go around the whole chainsaw chain, you know which one you stopped on. And I suggest taking the brake off so that you can move it around. Then you just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then that cutter is sharp. So you can see right there, this cutter here is sharp. So then you just go around the whole chain. And then that cutter's sharp there. And you want to make sure that you're doing even pressure, like I said, and same amount of strokes, so that you don't sharpen it unevenly and cause it to cut at an angle in the log. Then you just go around and do all the left-hand cutters, and then you flip the chainsaw around and do all the right-hand cutters. So I'll get back to you after I do all the left-hand cutters. Okay, so I've done all the left-hand cutters. Now I'm going to flip the chainsaw around and do all the right hand cutters. So you want to do all these chainsaw cutters on this side now. And then do the same amount of pressure and same strokes as you did on the other side. So I'll sharpen all the right hand cutters and then get back to you. Okay, so I've done all the right hand cutters now. Now as you can see, they're all sharp. And I'll show you how to do the depth gauges real quick. I've already done them the last time I sharpened the chainsaw chain. You only need to do the depth gauges like every 3 or 4 sharpenings because they don't need to be sharpened as often. But for this, you need a depth gauge tool, which is this, and you need a flat file. So to do the depth gauge, you set this tool over. Actually, let me go get my other one. But you set the tool just right over the depth gauge, covering the cutter tooth so you don't damage the newly sharpened cutter. And then if it's above this little slot in the depth gauge tool, then you know it needs to be sharpened or filed down. So like this one, you just do this until it's below the cutter or the depth gauge tool. But normally it's just like 2 or 3 strokes that you need to do for the depth gauges and to get them just filed below. And the depth gauge controls how deep of a cut each cutter makes when you're cutting with the chainsaw. But once you sharpen it, you'll have to sharpen it fairly often, depending on how many times you hit the ground, like dig the chainsaw into the ground, like if you're cutting a log or something or bucking a log. Depending on how often you do that, depends how often you sharpen it. But if you don't hit the ground very often, then you don't need to sharpen it very often because the cutters just aren't dull to be sharpened. And cutting at a fairly high speed also helps keep the cutter sharper for longer periods of time. So, and then just make sure that you clean all the stuff off and periodically take the bar off the chainsaw. And if you've worn the bottom rail down a lot from using the bottom part of the bar more often, then flip it upside down and then put the bottom rail now on the top and then the top on the bottom so that it wears evenly. And then you can go and it wears evenly and you don't have to replace the bars often. And make sure your pump for the oil, if it's adjustable, make sure that it's set at a fairly good rate so that you don't wear out the bar from the chainsaw chain rubbing on it a lot. And make sure that it's just clean, and whenever you take the bar off, use like a small flathead screwdriver and run it down the rail, and that gets all the built up oil and stuff, because the oil flows through the bottom right through the rail and lubricates everything. But if it's all gunked up, it can't flow, and then you don't lubricate your chain as well, and that's what would cause all this oil to be stuck there. But yeah, just basically keep your chainsaw clean and sharp, because a dull chain is dangerous and could cause kickback more so than if you have a sharp chain. So, and it also makes less fatigue on you because you aren't trying to push on the chainsaw. Because if it's sharp and you're using it properly, it causes little or no fatigue for you because you aren't having to push on it. Because it's just, you let the chainsaw do the work if you're cutting. But overall, just make sure you keep it sharp and make sure it's not worn out or anything. Keep your chain tight. Like this one's a little loose, but yeah, just keep it tight. And other than that, make sure your chain's safe. Chainsaw is safe. because it can hurt you very badly if you don't make sure it's safe. Anyways, thanks for watching. Bye.